California Heartland is made possible by the James G. Boswell Foundation, committed to sharing the stories and successes of California growers. Bank of America, Bank of Opportunity.
Funding provided in part by the California Farm Bureau Federation, proud publishers of California Country magazine. More information is available at californiacountry.org. And by the Almond Board of California. California almonds, loved around the world, grown in California's heartland. And by Real California Milk. This seal ensures your favorite dairy brands are made exclusively with Real California Milk. More information at realcaliforniamilk.com.
Coming up on a special edition of California Heartland, it's all about the garden and the gardener in you.
It's no wonder these are romantic, poeticized flowers.
Learn tips on turning any rose garden into a blooming success. And
an easy-to-grow California native are these.
Get the dirt on drought-tolerant plants that will survive scorching California heat. Plus,
Summer cooking and basil, yummy, the perfect combination.
have a field day with herbs. Next on this special edition of California Heartland.
From your backyard to the back country, in a field or on your family table, it's all about what keeps California moving and growing. This is California Heartland.
Hi, I'm Rob Stewart, and welcome to California Heartland. It's all about the garden and the gardener in you. You know, California is one of the best places in the world to grow things, so this time we're bringing you a special edition of our most popular garden segments from our expert garden gurus. First up, what to plant and where.
A rose is a rose is a rose, whether it's a tree, a ground cover, bush, or a hedge. It's no wonder these are romantic, poeticized flowers. They grow everywhere, including Alaska. They're a colorful mainstay to any gardens. And when our California heat and temperatures start to climb, these roses take off. Roses come in all different shapes and sizes, and this is the most classic bush form. This is a hybrid tea, a single rose on a stem. This is what we would put in a vase and what our florists use in arrangements. And then there's a floribunda or a grandiflora, and these are the more bang for your buck type rose. As you can see, a single stem, but a cluster of roses on the bush. And then one of my favorites, miniatures. I plant these in front of the rose garden. We're talking about miniature little buds. The plant itself can become very large, but the buds themselves will stay small. So not a miniature plant itself. And then these, you remember these growing in the back of your grandmother's yard. These are a shrub rose, and they can be placed anywhere. Just let them go and they'll just take off, and somebody will come up and say, what is that gorgeous plant in the back of your yard? It's a shrub rose. And then climbers. These are fabulous. And because it's a misnomer, they don't actually attach to the house. Instead, they need a little support, but they don't attach, and as a result, they're safe for building your trellis or your home. To keep roses happy during the summer months, you need to water consistently and then do something called deadheading. That's a way we trim and tidy up our bushes. Well, it's also a gardener's way of tricking Mother Nature into producing more flower blooms. Roses come with 3 and 5 set leaflets. We're going to take a pair of sharp pruning shears, and we're going to cut above the 5 set leaflet in a downward stroke. Once the rose is removed, you can drop it into a bucket. Now, you can do the whole plant at one time or just cut them as they fade. That's what I do, and bring them indoors. And then you've always got a little extra color left on the bush. Well, you can plant your rose in a pot or in the garden, but whatever location you pick, you want to get 6 hours of sunlight a day. Now, we're planting in the shade today, and I put on my gloves. We're going to knock the rose bush out of the pot. By that, I mean you tap the pot once we've watered the plant really well, and it will slip right out. Now, this time of year, The nursery has done most of your work for you. As you can see, there's a soil line, and you're just going to match that up. We put a little soil at the bottom of the pot, hold it there, and fill in around the edges. You can loosen up the pot line just a little bit as you put it in. The next step, once you've filled this, fill it just a little bit full because it's all going to settle down, is to water the plant. Be sure when you water the plant that you water the soil around the plant and not the leaves. So roses don't have to be a thorny project for your home garden. After all, it is the home that you give the roses and the time that you take to stop and smell the roses that really counts.
Where can you find the healthiest, freshest vegetables for your family? Why, in your own backyard, of course. Even if you don't have a green thumb, you're going to have the greatest vegetable garden on the block. The key to any successful garden: location, location, location. Vegetables love full sun. Give them at least 6 hours a day. More is better. And when you build your garden, run your rows east-west. That'll take maximum advantage of the sun. And when you plant your gardens, put the taller growing plants like tomatoes on the north end so it won't shade out smaller growing plants like basil or peppers. A raised bed can be as simple as a mound of dirt, perhaps 16 inches tall and 4 feet wide. Or it could be fancy like this, made out of redwood or brick or whatever you have handy. One piece of advice: when you build your raised bed, you can make it any length you want, but the width is important. Don't make it more than 4 feet wide because you want to be able to reach across the middle in order to pull weeds without falling into the bed. Soil in raised beds warms up quicker in the springtime, which means your plants get off to a great start. This is the best stuff you can add to your soil. It's organic compost. And what organic compost does, it feeds the soil. To rototill or not to rototill, that is the question. What are you supposed to do with this load of compost you just dumped in your garden bed? Well, old timers used to rototill. Now the thinking is all you need to do is lay it on top and spread it out. And before you even think about planting, you need to think about water. In my opinion, the best irrigation system for your yard is a drip irrigation system. And my favorite is this. It's called an inline emitter system. You can't see the emitters, but they're built into this pipe and they're spaced about 1 foot apart. They're 1 gallon per hour emitters. On a drip irrigation system, at each emitter, as the water drips out, the water's actually underground going to spread out to a radius of 12 to 18 inches. So you want to space any sort of irrigation lines about 18 inches apart so that you have full coverage of a garden bed. Well, it looks like our drip irrigation system is working, and you can see that it's dripping about every foot, which is what we want. And you know, it's time to plant. One thing I like about a drip emitter system like this, where the emitters are spaced 1 foot apart, it makes it really easy to figure out where to put the plants. For instance, tomatoes like to be about 3 feet apart, so I just count emitters. 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm going to show you a little trick. It's a pretty nifty little trick that you may not know about tomatoes. First of all, I'm going to plant it where the emitter is to be sure it gets water. And then I'm going to dig as deep as I can to get a nice deep hole. Tomatoes will actually form roots all along this main stem here. So I'm going to see how deep I can get this in, and I can see I can get it up to about there. So what I'm going to do, when I pop this out of the container, first thing I'm going to do is free up the roots. And you can be gentle, just loosen them up a little bit. And then I'm going to prune off the lower sets of leaves on these tomato plants. Now, as I put the dirt back in time, there will be roots forming all along where I buried it. And you're going to have a stronger, healthier plant. Well, we've fertilized regularly, we've watered regularly, and yet the biggest task remains. And that's to harvest all those beautiful vegetables you're going to be picking all summer. Gardening is fun for the family, and it's healthy too. Start a vegetable garden today. Now, if you don't mind, I got to finish some planting here.
Most of us think of herbs as spices that come in bottles, cans, and packages like these from the grocery store. But these come from plants that are versatile and easy to grow in your own yard. So stop paying the big bucks for clippings like these and buy plants that will not only spice up your food, but your landscaping too. You don't need to grow herbs just in a pot or container in your backyard. Consider planting herbs and plants and trees in your landscaping. Where do you start? Well, I would start with a tree. We all need trees in our landscaping, and this is a perfect one. This is a native California bay laurel. It grows wild everywhere, so you know that it loves our California climate. It's evergreen, it's going to grow large, and it's drought resistant. Plus, it's got this great evergreen look, and it's got leaves that you can use dried in your cooking all year long. Next, I would suggest planting some rosemary. No garden should be without a rosemary bush. Not only is it a favorite in the kitchen, but it's a fabulous landscape plant. This is an upright rosemary, gets bright blue flowers in the spring, and as you can see, it's going to grow tall, so you can use it in the back of the garden as a screen along a fence line or in front of a building. You can buy different sizes and place those in front of your trees. There are also prostratus or low-growing varieties of rosemary that will grow down a hillside or along walkways. These two are edible and can be used in the kitchen all year long. Then there's thyme, and this is my very favorite herb in the kitchen. I use it for salad dressings, but it's also my favorite landscape plant. It's a mounding, airy-looking evergreen plant. I like this lemon, lime, or variegated type of color for the landscaping. This will mound up or can be used as a ground cover. You can even take some of these and place them in rock outcroppings. They're going to cascade down the rocks, and anytime you need one, you can just pinch off a little bit of this and use it in the kitchen all season long. Lavender is another great herb that's great in the landscape. Look at it here. It's a shrubby edging plant. It's got a gray-green element, lends itself well to your garden, and it has decorative uses, aromatherapy uses, and can be used in your kitchen too. Summer cooking and basil, yummy, the perfect combination. Cuttings you get from the farmer's market won't last you all summer long, but a plant will. They're annuals, they come in green or purple. You just need to mix them into the garden and keep them pinched so that you have bright green leaves all summer long until the very first winter frost. If you don't have a garden, certainly a container is a good alternative. As you can see here, it's got a little bit of everything. It will last you most of the year with rosemary, thyme, and chives, and an annual basil. And I've just given you a few suggestions of different herbs that you can put in your garden. There's still marjoram, oregano, mint, but use your imagination. The idea is you don't have to have an herb garden, just a garden for your herbs.
Now it's time to talk tips. Our garden experts are loved for their amazing tips and some pretty interesting tricks for bringing out the best in your garden. Everything from growing that famous California fruit to finding plants that will survive that scorching California heat.
You know, water shortages are happening all across the country. In Georgia recently, they banned outdoor watering in some communities because the local lakes had run dry. The same thing could happen here in California. And the question is, are you and your garden ready for that? Which plants are most susceptible to a prolonged period of drought? Well, water-thirsty trees for one, plus thirsty shrubs, ground covers, and everybody's favorite, lawns. One answer is to convert all or part of your yard to plants that don't need much water, basically just what falls from the sky. And that's why I've brought you here to the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center in Fair Oaks, California. They have a great collection of California native plants and drought-tolerant plants. Let's take a look. Okay, let's say you're going to tear out your lawn. You want to put in some drought-tolerant plants. What are some good choices? You need low-growing plants, and this is one of my favorite low-growing plants. This is called Teucrium or germander. It's from the Mediterranean region and forms a mound, not very high, so it could fill in and look like a lawn. But maybe you want something that's maybe a bit grassier? Well, how about this? This is called Australian bluegrass. Australian bluegrass gets about 2 feet tall and maintains its color and form probably 10 to 11 months of the year. But you know, my favorite lawn substitute if you're looking for a drought-tolerant plant is this right here. This is called Santa Barbara daisy, also known as erigeron, and it stays in bloom 11 months of the year, and it spreads. But maybe you don't have a green thumb. Maybe you're looking for some easy plants. Have I got some easy plants for you? Come on. And easy to grow California native are these California poppies. They blossom in the springtime, they do die back, but you know what? They pop up again the following year. They're easy. Lavatera, or tree mallow. It grows about 8 feet tall, stays in bloom about 8 months of the year, and it's really a nice centerpiece for any yard. But maybe you're looking for something that requires absolutely no water once it's established. Well, you can't beat this. Ceanothus. Ceanothus's range in size from ground covers to 10, 12-foot tall shrubs, and the beautiful blue-purple blossoms fill the plant in the springtime. Give these plants plenty of room to grow. They're going to get big. Now, they may look a little lonesome down here, but this plant in particular is going to spread out 5 or 6 feet. So you don't want to stare at a plant all by its lonesome like that? Well, open up a seed packet of annuals like California natives and just start spreading them around. Don't fool yourself, there will be a drought in California. And now's the time to start yanking out your thirsty lawns, trees, and shrubs and replacing them with California natives and drought-tolerant plants. And my only problem is, I don't know which ones to choose.
In these bulbs, it's everything you need for a spring garden. There are leaves, flowers, nutrients. Mother Nature even supplies the climate and the water. All you have to do is find a place for these in your garden, plant them, and then the hard part is wait till next spring. Well, not all bulbs look like this. There are tubers, rhizomes, like bearded irises, but they all have one very important thing in common. There's all a little tiny plant inside of them. So fall is typically when we think of planting these type of things because look at the display here in the nursery, in garden centers, and in grocery stores. But you can plant bulbs all year round. So how do we pick among all these bulbs? I'll show you how. So let's dive into this bucket of bulbs. Generally, the bigger the bulb, the better. The bigger flower you're going to get. This is a daffodil, so rule of thumb, pick the biggest bulb for the type of bulb that you're going to plant. This is a daffodil. This is a tulip. Really nice form tulip, very solid. Stay away from anything that's mushy or that has a white fusarium mold on it. This black and brown stuff can just be brushed off and it's not going to present any problems. Now, many times you're just going to buy them in packages like this. Just make sure, like you would do anything else, turn it over, thumb through the ones that are in the package, feel them, make sure there's none mushy. Some of these are so beautiful because they've been put together by horticultural societies and you get a real beautiful mix of bulbs. Although bulbs aren't real fussy, you're still going to want a good mix in your garden soil. Make sure it's not too sandy, the water will drain away, or too clay-like because then it's going to really smother the roots. So make sure you've got a soil that holds together and can be easily broken apart. You're also going to want to use a supplemental nutrient like a bulb fertilizer that has time-release nitrogen in it. Just sprinkle a little of that in the soil and mix it in. And while your bulbs do have nutrients in it, this is just going to give it a little extra energy for that long underground growing season. I like to toss bulbs into the area that I'm going to plant instead of placing them, and then I dig a hole wherever they land. I think it looks a lot more natural that way, although it does depend on the look you're trying to achieve. Just make sure that you plant lots of bulbs so you fill in that area that you are planting and save some for cut flowers later. There are a couple of ways to plant the bulbs, either with a bulb digger or with a trowel. A rule of thumb, make sure you dig down 3 times as deep as the bulb is tall. In case of a 2-inch tulip bulb, you're going to want to dig down 6 inches, pull it up, place the bulb pointy side up with the case of a tulip, and then fill in the hole. With the daffy, make sure these furry feet are planted feet first. So all that excitement about those little brown bulbs, but here's the payoff. So make a wish for the future. There's nothing so bright and cheerful as the first signs of spring after a long winter. Fruit trees should be a mainstay in everybody's backyard. There are those beautiful spring blossoms, this vibrant fall color, and in addition, this, the tasty rewards of fruit. Californians are so lucky. There are so many different fruit trees that you can pick and choose from and plant in your own backyard. So where do we start? Well, water is really important for healthy looking plants and trees. So you might, first of all, consider more drought resistant varieties like figs, pomegranates, or even persimmons. But you don't want to limit yourself to just these trees. There are new methods that minimize water use for trees like apricots, pears, and even apples. Ed Libo is with me from Dave Wilson Nursery, and one of the biggest indicators of how much water your tree is going to need is your soil. That's what you're doing, is digging this out.
Got to figure out how well it's going to drain to determine whether or not the tree is going to live. And what we want to do is we want to create a hole about a foot across, about a foot deep. We want to fill it with water one time. We want to let that drain, and then we want to fill it with water again. If it takes longer than 4 hours for that second draining, you got a drainage problem, and more than likely you should be considering possibly mounding the trees.
Then you have to look at the different type of trees and the rootstock that come with them. You brought a couple examples here.
Well, if I've got poor draining soils, I'm going to want to elevate the tree, but I'm also going to want, for the sake of drought tolerance, I like more aggressive roots. I like a roots that gets down into the ground fast and gets established quickly. That's mostly standard rootstock.
Yeah, it's a very deep taproot.
Very deep taproot. Here's a typical semi-dwarf root, which is, you know, a lot of surface roots, a little weaker grower. But that's very typical of semi-dwarf. I want something that's going to get down deep where the water is going to be. And that's going to make this plant much, much more able to tolerate those dry conditions. Or this might also be good for wet locations, but not wet during the winter time. Just say a lawn situation that drains well, but you know it doesn't have standing water. Then this would be a good choice.
The rootstock we just talked about doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to tell the difference in the size of the tree. You make the difference by pruning, and in turn that all helps with how much water you use.
Absolutely, and in this case right here we have a tree that's nice, low, manageable.
Can pick anything.
Right, and if we're going to do something like this, we're going to take and have semi or standard rootstocks to begin with. We're going to want to have management and size control a primary goal right from the time we planted, right from the beginning.
All right, now one additional thing that we've done here is we've planted 3 trees together.
Yes.
Because we've only had to test one soil location.
Right.
And we're watering one location.
Absolutely.
So we've got this figured out in the first season.
Yeah, and we've got pollinator here, so if your variety needs a pollinator, the pollinator is nice and close by. We don't need large quantities of fruit, so we're going to have seasonal successive ripening off of this, and at the same time, we are going to know our watering needs very, very well, so we know how much water this tree needs just to stay healthy in the next few years.
And then we're going to go underneath the tree because it needs one more thing. Well, we're talking about mulch, and it can be a number of different things. It can be straw, it can be bark mulch. The important thing to minimize water usage is to make sure it's deep enough to prevent evaporation of the water from underneath the plant.
Absolutely, Kristine, and 4 inches is probably about where you want to be, so you be generous with the mulch. Come out at least 3 feet from the trunk. As the tree gets bigger, you're going to also want to take and increase the parameter of your mulch.
So you look at the canopy and come down, and this is where you're going to want the mulch all the way around the tree, and in this case, the 3 trees.
Absolutely.
And we're talking also about water. You want a really efficient drip system with some really good emitters. Good idea to test the soil just to make sure you know how much water's in the soil. Moisture meters work really well. I think they're the best thing out there for it.
As a matter of fact, I think before you water, you should always check to see if your ground really needs to be watered.
They're pretty accurate.
Yeah, they can tell wet or dry very well.
So don't just sit around. Fruit trees can be planted all year long. What do you like to eat? Well, find varieties that bear at different times, and you're going to enjoy bounty from your own backyard all year long.
And speaking of bounty and variety, we've got a bountiful variety of gardening segments on our website at CaliforniaHeartland.org. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of California Heartland. It's all about the garden and the gardener in you. Now I've got some planting to do.
That's California Heartland. For more information on any of these stories, go to californiaheartland.org. I'm Chris Burrows. We'll see you next time.
To order a copy of this show, visit us online or call 1-888-814-3923. The cost is $14.95 plus shipping. California Heartland is made possible by the James G. Boswell Foundation, committed to sharing the stories and successes of California growers. Bank of America, Bank of Opportunity.
Funding provided in part by the California Farm Bureau Federation, proud publishers of California Country magazine. More information is available at californiacountry.org. And by the Almond Board of California. California almonds, loved around the world, grown in California's heartland. And by Real California Milk. This seal ensures your favorite dairy brands are made exclusively with Real California Milk. More information at realcaliforniamilk.com.